exposing the propaganda and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. With you, as always, this is your host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. Actually having to reboot and re-air this broadcast as we ran into some technical difficulties. Not real sure what happened, but it was a high level of interference. We actually got bumped off of the broadcast for a few minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to get through this a little bit better this time. At any rate, got 3 topics we wanted to cover today. But before we get into that, I also wanted to go ahead and mention some exciting news here at Tap Into the Truth. As most of you know by now, if you pay much attention to this broadcast, or if you've ever listened to it before, we also do a broadcast by the same name, Tap Into the Truth, over at Blog Talk Radio. It's a 2-hour format there. Try to get guests on as often as possible, try to make it interesting, but regardless of whether we have guests or not, we do a lot of different things, conversational-wise, including in the chat room, which is very active over there. The exciting news there is the Blog Talk version is now being carried as part of the Stitcher Radio On Demand network. So Tapping the Truth can be found in the conservative talk section there. What makes that exciting for us is the fact that now we are literally alongside the A-listers of the business, along with a few of the B-listers. It's kind of a big deal, and we're very excited. For those of you who may not be familiar with Stitcher Radio On Demand, there are some few basic information giblets that you might be interested in. First of all, Stitcher Radio On Demand is available as a free app. Basically, you can listen anytime, anywhere, now, even without Wi-Fi or a cell phone connection. Stitcher is an award-winning free mobile app that lets you listen to all of your favorite shows, plus discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You listen whenever you want, wherever you want, with one free app. Literally, they have tens of thousands of shows in different stations, and they're all there waiting for you to discover them. You also get customized recommendations from the Stitcher app. As you pick certain shows that you listen to as you browse, they'll start making recommendations for you, other things they think that you might like, and they give you an opportunity to discover brand new things that maybe you're not aware of. You also can connect your Facebook account and comment on episodes. And I know most of the content providers, especially myself, would love to hear what you have to say, especially making sure that you say it through Facebook. Not only gives us the opportunity to get the feedback that we need to continue bringing you quality products, but it also helps to spread the word about the show and the service. With Stitcher, when it comes to listening to these shows, there's no downloading, no syncing, and no wasted memory. TechCrunch named Stitcher one of the 20 best iOS and Android apps of 2012. It is therefore, of course, available for iPhone, Android, and for most tablets. You have on demand, on the go. And if you don't have Stitcher, but it sounds interesting, download it for free. You can do that at either Stitcher.com or you can go to your app store. In either case, the opportunity to listen to Tap Into the Truth. If you're not already following us directly there, you're more than welcome to check us out there. Or, of course, you still can get us on iTunes. iTunes has both the Spreaker and the Blog Talk version of the show. So much for the housekeeping. Let's get to the first topic. The main topic that we're titled, although this isn't the most important topic of today's show. It's certainly the most buzzworthy. Why? Everybody here locally, as this is pretty much a local story for us here in East Tennessee, everybody's talking about this right now because it has made the headlines. And it is simply it's a matter of overstepping of judicial authority. It's a matter of a judge not only overstepping her authority, but she made the fatal error of invoking the name of Jesus Christ in the middle of the courtroom. Now that's just terrible. Still, not a whole lot of facts have been reported in this case, just a lot of talking about the controversial nature of what occurred. So, here are the facts. This basically coming out of Newport, Tennessee. A Cocke County judge has ordered the parents of a 7-month-old boy to change his first name from Messiah. Now, according to the local television news, Jaleesa Martin and the father of the little boy were at a child support hearing in Cocke County Chancery Court last week because they couldn't agree on a last name for him. After hearing the child's first name, the child support magistrate, Luann Ballou, ordered the boy's name be Martin Deshawn McCullough, which includes the last names of both parents and obviously leaves out the name Messiah. This particular child support magistrate then insisted during her explanation that the word Messiah isn't a name, it's a title. And it's a title that's been earned by just one person. And that one person is Jesus Christ. Now, Miss Martin, the mother of the child of Newport, is appealing the judge's decision, and joy upon joys, the ACLU of Tennessee, an affiliate of the ACLU, you know, like there's affiliates of Al-Qaeda, I like that, has announced that they will be getting involved in this case. Why do they feel the need? Well, they're the ACLU, and well, quite frankly, the instant that Luann, great judge that she is, uttered the words Jesus Christ in reference to the name Messiah, introduced a violation of church and state. And in this particular case, it really is. Now, first of all, I personally feel like it was an overstep to change the kid's name anyway. It doesn't matter what your particular faith is. And unfortunately, too many times in the past, judges have been allowed to get away with this behavior. There are at least 3 other cases in the state of Tennessee where judges have changed a child's name in the best interest of the child. And those name changes stood. They stood because the judge in those particular cases made no mention of religious, faith-based ideology in the purpose. Now, Luann, I have no doubt, truly believed that she was acting in the best interest of the child. There may very well be significant reason to be concerned that bullying and ostracizing might have taken place if your first name is Messiah. Yes, Messiah. Hello, Messiah. What's going on, Messiah? Yeah, there could be some issue there. The real problem comes from the fact that being a stupid parent is not against the law. If that stupidity goes to a certain level, then yeah, you could eventually get there. But giving your kid a bad name doesn't meet that criteria. I don't know to what extent that this particular name would be a issue for the kid as he grew up. It may not even have been one. And as far as that goes, once the kid got old enough, what's to keep them from going by his middle name instead? There's plenty of blame to go around here. First of all, in none of the stories that I've come across yet have I came across the name of the baby daddy. That's your first clue that there's some serious issues going on here. But beyond that, we've got to take a look at this because not so much the separation of church and state issue, but because the state has overstepped its bounds in trying to take parental rights away. We've been warned that this is coming. If you pay any attention to MSNBC and lean forward, well, their host has already told us that our children are really community property. Socialism is a nasty habit that really doesn't believe in the family. They seek to destroy it. The state wants that authority. This judge, heart in the right place or not in this issue, is playing right along into that hand. Ooh, as the judge, I have the authority. I have the power. This case, her decision is going to be overturned. It's going to be overturned because of the separation of state issue. This is one time, one occasion where completely and totally, straight up, there's no question. This is a violation of church and state. She stated specifically, she imposed her religious belief into making this decision. She imposed her religious belief onto this family. These people, we don't know what the religious beliefs are of this family based on any of the reports that I've come across. This case is still too new for a lot of that information to be out there. But to assume that naming your child Messiah is disrespectful or offensive means that you're coming from it from an angle where you are reading that into it. Not very many people accuse Hispanics of being disrespectful or sacrilege for naming their children Jesus. Normally, when they've named their children Jesus, it's actually meant to honor their faith. Now, this may not even have been a faith-based name. They may have just liked the name Messiah because they've listened to enough conservative talk radio that they've heard people like Rush and Hannity call Obama the Messiah. So they're like, I'd like my son to be like Obama. And it could be just that stupid. They may not even know what Messiah means. So giving them this lesson, as it were, it's an overreach. We shouldn't be worried as much about the separation of church and state that was obviously violated here as we should be of the fact that if she hadn't have mentioned Jesus Christ in her ruling, that there probably wouldn't be grounds for an appeal. Our government, no part of it, should have the authority to countermand the parental responsibilities unless there are serious legal concerns. And there's a protocol for that. The standards are set a bit higher. Are the parents being abusive? Are the parents being neglectful? I have a tendency to believe that sometimes our judicial system is too quickly to make that assertion and overstep their bounds there. But regardless of the occasions, if it's right or wrong, if it's truly necessary in the best interest of the child to get the child out of the home, then that's one thing. But if they have no intention of taking parental responsibilities away from one or the other of these parents, then they have no right to change this child's name, regardless of what they may perceive to be the benefits. I honestly believe this judge probably did have the child's best interest in mind. But it doesn't matter. This is classic separation of church and state issue because she did, in fact, as part of the judicial branch of our government, albeit this at the state level, she imposed her religious viewpoint on someone else. That can't be allowed to stand, and it won't be. But there still has to be limits outside of just the religious side of this question. Would love to hear your opinions. We'll probably talk about this some on Sunday, so feel free to call in and blog talk if you want to talk about that at that point. In the meanwhile, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to shift gears. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tap into the truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog post and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth right here on Spreaker Radio.
Yes, that's right. Right here on Spreaker, we're bringing this show to you live, whether you listen in live or check us out on the podcast later. Appreciate you listening. Do hope you take the opportunities to follow the show. As most of the Spreaker fans know by now, here at Spreaker, we have an opportunity to get our broadcast carried by iHeartRadio, another venue to try and get our word out. Would very much appreciate and enjoy it if you folks would take the time and be so kind as to follow the show, as that's one of the major obstacles that a lot of the podcasters here have had at making that connection. Some of us that provide content here at Spreaker get very creative. A lot of times you see a lot of explicit stuff going on. And, that's one of the things about internet radio. The rules aren't quite the same, but when you want to go someplace like with what Clear Channel does, and those are the folks that run and operate iHeartRadio, they want content that can be easily accessed, that's not going to be particularly offensive. Now, in some cases, they go a little overboard. But regardless of all of that, the point is, if you don't mind too awful much, I would appreciate it greatly if you would take the time to follow the show. And while you're at it, please check us out on Blog Talk as well. If you wouldn't mind checking out Tap Into the Truth, where there's links to past broadcasts as well, links directly to Blog Talk, links directly to the player from Stitcher, which if you do like Stitcher Radio, if you've already got the app, you can look us up directly there. Of course, you can find Tap Into the Truth, both versions of the show, at iTunes. A lot of downloads going on. I've actually been pleasantly surprised looking at the numbers of how many folks are listening in and downloading us from iTunes. That's just phenomenal. It's great. I'm very happy with that. The only thing I'm not happy with, I mean, we've got great number of plays, just not a lot of follows here and over at Blog Talk. Folks are listening in. Folks are in the chat rooms. People are getting active. And evidently, folks are either having a good time listening to the show or having a good time making fun of me. I don't know which. But either way, just not a lot of follows. A lot of the same people showing up. Just not a lot of follows. It only takes a second, folks. Please, just go ahead and push the button. That way, you get plenty of warnings and updates about what's going on with the show so you don't run the risk of missing a broadcast. Plus, it does help us to continue to spread the word. And that's a good thing. Now, I'm going to try and hit this topic really quickly, and then I'm going to try to get to the crust of what I really wanted to get on the air with tonight. This just really, really odd. Not so much now that it's unexpected because we've seen this thing before, but the State Department is releasing a statement now that it's denouncing enemies of Islam. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Our State Department. State Department spokesperson Jen Pulaski issued a press release denouncing the, quote, enemies of Islam, following car bombings in Baghdad this past week that appeared to have been targeted to Shiite festivities marking the end of Ramadan. Now, according to Reuters, the bombings consisted of 12 separate blasts targeting markets, shopping centers, streets, and parks that are nearby these markets. The explosions did kill almost 80 people. Back on the 10th, the press release from the State Department website was posted as follows. The United States condemns, in the strongest possible terms, the cowardly attacks in Baghdad. These attacks were aimed at families celebrating the Eid al-Fitr holiday. Forgive my pronunciation, I don't speak Arabic very well. That marks the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The terrorists who committed these acts are enemies of Islam and a shared enemy of the United States, Iraq, and the international community. Now, there was a group called the P.T. Tatler that pointed out this quick condemnation of the enemies of Islam stands in sharp contrast to the way the Obama administration has handled Boko Haram's ongoing slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. When the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Johnny Carson, testified before Congress last year, he said that Boko Haram's attacks were not religiously motivated. Now, I find it interesting, not at all odd, but interesting, that they'd be so quick to denounce enemies of Islam. We had the embassy closings last week, which we talked about here. And then we have this. Now, granted, terrorists are bad people regardless. And my real question when it comes to this is, was it because this was targeted at Shiites? Are we getting our first indication as far as which side of the Muslim faith the administration prefers? Do they lean more Shiite than Sunni? Just food for thought. But the point is very valid when it comes to other issues of faith, especially those dealing with Christian affairs. The Obama administration is strangely silent. As we try to delve past the headlines there, they hide behind flowery language, but this is one of the strongest statements that they've made yet. Why can this administration not make a statement this bold in support of one of our allies? Doesn't matter. This man continues, referring to the occupier, of course. This man continues to defile our nation and to make us appear weak and to make us look like a joke. In the process, here's something that has been glossed over mainstream and a lot of conservative news outlets as well, has completely missed one of the major points of Obama's press conference from the Vineyard while on his very lush and very awesome vacation. I think the man's been on vacation way more than anyone else that I know of. He actually admitted to violating the Constitution. Now, this is a first because every other time they spun it and tried to jump around and hee-haw and, whatever else. I'm not really doing it. He actually admitted to violating the Constitution. He then, of course, did what he always does, which is deflect, deny, deflect. He deflected here and blamed the Republicans. In case you missed it, hadn't heard it, during the question and answer session at the end of the little feel-good speech that the occupier decided to give, he was asked some questions by Fox News Channel's Ed Henry. He started out asking about Obamacare. The president answered the question by saying that it's the Republicans' fault that he had to violate the Constitution. Now, Ed Henry's question was, quote, October 1st, you're going to implement your signature health care law. You recently decided on your own to delay a key part of that. And I wonder, if you pick and choose what parts of the law to implement, couldn't your successor down the road pick and choose whether they'll implement your law and keep it in place? Now, Mr. Henry also asked about Benghazi. However, that's worthy of a completely full-blown show, and we'll probably revisit that. I mention that just because we should not and cannot forget what transpired there, and we can't take the heat off. Justice for Benghazi must be served. But the occupier stated that Obamacare, his answer on the Obamacare question, quote, I didn't simply choose to delay this on my own. This was in consultation with businesses all across the country, many of whom are supportive of the Affordable Care Act. Joke. That's a joke name, sorry. It's more like the Unaffordable Care Act. Many of whom, by the way, are already providing health insurance to their employees, but were concerned about the operational details of changing their HR operations if they've got a lot of employees, which could be costly for them, and them suggesting that there may be easier ways to do this. Translation: the occupier consulted with business leaders before he decided to violate the Constitution. He violated the Constitution, of course, by changing the law on his own. That's the whole point. He doesn't have that authority. He has the authority to sign something into law, but once something becomes law, the law can only be amended or changed by Congress, and then he has to sign it again, making that again the law. He's not allowed to just up and change a law that's currently in place. Congress passed a law that said that the employer mandate will begin on January 1st, 2014. The occupier pushed it back one full year without any approval from Congress. Why? Well, we've already discussed that too. This is all about midterm elections. Regardless, the occupier's excuse for violating the Constitution gets even better. Because, you see, he blames the Republicans. Quote, "Now, what's true, Ed, is that a normal political environment, it would have been easier for me to simply call up the speaker and say, you know what, this is a tweak that doesn't go to the essence of the law. It has to do with, for example, are we able to simplify the attention of employers as to whether they're already providing health insurance or not? It looks like there may be some better ways to do this. Let's make a technical change of the law. That would be the normal thing that I would prefer to do, but we're not in a normal atmosphere around here when it comes to quote unquote Obamacare." Kind of cute. Even Obama's now calling it Obamacare. He was very reluctant about that in the past, just in case you hadn't noticed. The man's ego continues to grow. That's what it comes down to. Anyway, I continue. So it's the political environment that enabled the occupier to change a law by executive fiat. We must have forgot about that provision in the U.S. Constitution that enables the president to change laws on his own because of the political environment isn't favorable to his wishes. On that point, the occupier continues, quote, "We did have the executive authority to do so, and we did so. But this doesn't go to the core of implementation." Okay, he admits that he violated the Constitution, and then later he claims he has the authority to do it? He didn't have the authority to change the law. There is no executive authority to change law. He was violating the Constitution when he refused to defend the Defense of Marriage Act. Once it's law, it's the responsibility of the executive branch to defend that law. They may not like it. They don't have to like it. They're supposed to defend it. If the Supreme Court strikes it down at that point, that's fine, but they're supposed to do it. That's part of the job. It's a constitutional requirement. The fact that he even discussed changing it by the normal legislative process if the political environment was more favorable demonstrates that even he believed that congressional involvement was necessary to change the law. Translation, he knows it was. He, in fact, was a, quote, constitutional scholar before he became a sorry, I'm really getting angry the more I think about this. Before he became a community organizer, he was a professor, a teacher, a scholar. He was someone who studied the Constitution. Well, the folks on the left have done well at studying it because they know that the best way to defeat it is to be more knowledgeable about it than the average citizen. And unfortunately, they've managed to dumb down public schools enough that most citizens these days really don't know very much about the Constitution. Now, it's not always the fault of the teachers, okay? I'm not attacking teachers. Don't get me wrong. But teachers have their hands tied by the curriculum that's put in front of them. And these days, teachers are getting fired for going off script. A lot of the best teachers are really being off-put by this new Common Core standards that are being put forward. But where else are you hearing the fact that Obama actually admitted to violating the Constitution? Now, in his own words, we have him admitting that he's violated the Constitution. Now, he still blames it on somebody else, but he seems to have this misconception that just because he's occupying the office of the president, that he's free to do who knows what. He's not. There are limits, and those limits are put in place for the specific purpose of protecting freedoms of the United States citizens. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready to trade away your freedoms, then so be it. But there's an easier way to do it. Just leave the country. Get the hell out of it. If you don't want the freedoms that are guaranteed you by the United States Constitution, go somewhere else, denounce your citizenship, and move on. You probably end up paying less in taxes anyway. There has to be a line drawn in the sand. Now he's getting so emboldened in speaking publicly that he's admitting to violating the Constitution, and he's still trying to blame someone else for it. I mean, did you hear what he said? I get so angry when it comes to this particular press conference, because first of all, he's having it from the vineyard, wasting another who knows how many millions of taxpayer dollars because they have to have an extended security team, and it's expensive to stay there, and they're in a different house this time than the last time, and please, this man has acted as if he is the royal emperor of the United States instead of the president. Which is good, because he was not duly elected. He is really not the president of the United States. The question of his eligibility to hold the office is still up in the air. He's put out fake birth certificate after fake birth certificate. There are multiple birth certificates that have been introduced as evidence in the eligibility case going on in Alabama. We're quickly losing track of what the freedoms are supposed to be that we have in this country, and we have the chief executive officer of this country, or at least the person masquerading as such, completely ignoring the Constitution in any of their activities. You can go back and you can check. You can go to downtrend.com. You can go to foxnews.com. You can go to almost any website out there that had any level of coverage of last Friday's press conference from the vineyard. He made a buttload of promises that he has no intention of keeping, try to take credit for what Republicans in the House of Representatives have been doing as far as cutting down on the backlog of veterans' benefits. This man is possibly a bigger threat to this country than the Soviet Union ever was. Because what he's doing is completely dismantling the Constitution. And if you think that you're okay with that, then again, I recommend you leave the country. Get out of here. You cannot take my freedoms. You're not going to take freedoms away from my family. It is not going to happen. You're not going to take freedoms away from my fellow patriots. If you believe in the United States Constitution, if you support that United States Constitution, then you and I can be friends. And it's not going to make a bit of difference what skin tone you are. It's not going to make a bit of difference what faith you practice. It's not going to make a bit of difference what job you have, or, unfortunately, in this economy, maybe don't have. We've got enough of a building block right there. And I'll have your back. And I hope you'll have mine. And if we stand together, ladies and gentlemen, as citizens that believe in God and country, then this new attempt, as advanced as it's gotten, will fail just like all the previous attempts have. But we've got to stand together, and we cannot let being a patriot become a crime. So that's what they're trying to do. That's the move. That's the push. When this man will tell you that he had to violate the Constitution so he could get his way, that's the whole reason we have the Constitution. So that any leader in any office can't just automatically get their way. It's there to make sure that our rights as citizens of this nation, our authority as citizens of this nation, are not usurped by any would-be dictator. The Constitution was written specifically to keep the power in the hands of the people. And if so many people want to give up that power, that doesn't make it okay for that same power to be taken from everyone else. They just need to shut up and stand back. If you're not bright enough to figure out who's actually going to do the most to help you, then you need to get out of the way and don't vote. If you're not smart enough to realize that the government can't afford to give you everything you need, it can't afford to take care of you, then you need to shut up and stop voting and get out of the way. If you're not bright enough to figure out that the United States government doesn't have a penny of its own money, it has to take it from your friends, your neighbors, or even worse, from you, then you don't deserve to have a voice in who gets to run the government. And that, ladies and gentlemen, isn't me telling you that you shouldn't be voting. That's me telling you that you need to become informed, and you need to just stop freaking drinking the Kool-Aid. You can't take any politician at face value, regardless if they're Democrat or Republican. You need to look at what they say and then look at what they do. You need to start reading the bills and the laws that these people vote or have voted on, if they have supported. And you need to find out who's actually doing what's best for the American people. Find out who's doing what's best for you. And if the guy that you've got in there now is somebody that you voted for just because you voted for him before, but they haven't done what's in your best interest, then it's time to find somebody new to vote for. Ladies and gentlemen, that is tonight's show. Thank you very much for listening. Hope I didn't get a little too preachy there at the end. Please, again, check us out, tapintothetruth.com. Check out the Tap Into the Truth Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter. Remember, we are now on Stitcher Radio On Demand for the Blog Talk version of the show. Please don't take my word for it. Definitely definitely don't take their word for it. Take some time, do your own research, use your brain, and always be prepared to do just a little bit of work if you really want to tap into the truth. Have a great night, everybody.